Hello, and welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network. Thanks for clicking on us. I'm Peter Martin, president of Gosselin Martin Associates, and as always, welcome. So today I want to introduce episode 2 of our series, Generations in Healthcare Facilities. We released the first episode last week. If you haven't seen that, you can find it on our YouTube page in the Pathways to Healthcare Facility Management Careers playlist. So you should have a playlist on the YouTube channel, and the Pathways one would have episode 1 of Generations. This is a continuation of the discussion we had with our 4 guests from last week, who all happen to be millennials and all happen to be experienced in healthcare facilities management. It was a great discussion last week. This week we follow up. We start talking right away about work-life balance and the importance of work-life balance. And then at the end, I asked the question, would you recommend this career to college students and to young professionals? And I get some interesting answers. Some of the answers actually kind of surprised me in a good way because they were very thoughtful. And I hope you stay tuned for that and listen to those, because I think some of what was discussed can be instructive for an organization as they seek to hire that next generation of talent. We talk about in this episode how expectations have changed and how, this generation of millennials is different than my generation, and it's different from the baby boomers. And that's neither a good thing nor a bad thing, but it is a thing. And because it's a thing, we have to be aware of it. So it's a really good discussion follow-up. So I hope you'll watch episode 1 and obviously watch episode 2. Just 2 quick items, because I think what I'm about to say ties into this discussion that we have with my generations group. Modern Healthcare released a survey relative to C-level leadership, and it was talking about salaries among C-level leadership. And I'm in the process of reviewing that now, but they mentioned 5 things, and 2 of the items that they mentioned I thought were interesting because there's very much a commonality with what we are seeing in healthcare facilities management. I look outside the window, sorry about that. It is absolutely pouring here right now. And, we're up in New England, and whenever you watch us, I don't know when you will, but early July, flooding rains through a lot of the 6-state region. But right now it's teeming outside. But anyways, that's not what modern healthcare talked about. One of the first things that they talk about, again, at the C-level leadership level, they say demand for executive talent is higher than the available supply. Where have we heard that before? In their write-up, though, what I thought was interesting, in their survey, respondents, nearly 90% of healthcare systems that responded to their April survey, so the survey was done in April, saw steady or heightened turnover over the past year among leadership roles due to burnout, retirement, and the availability of other career opportunities. They go on to say that we need to strengthen the pipeline. So when I read strengthen the pipeline, I was kind of, I chuckled, to be quite honest to myself, because that is the goal of the Healthcare Facilities Network. It is to fill the pipeline. We don't work at the C-level, but we are seeing retirements, we are seeing burnout, and we are seeing people leave. So it was kind of a validation for what we are trying to do here with the Healthcare Facilities Network. The other item that they talk about in the survey was they're looking for wide-ranging skills in C-level leadership. We too are looking for wide-ranging skills, right? And we hear about this a little bit in our next, in our episode coming up. But they also said that some healthcare systems are looking outside of the industry for leadership talent in areas such as marketing, human resources, and technology, which I thought was interesting. We don't cover the C-level, as I said, so we're not going to comment on that, but I just thought it was an interesting grouping of skills that they're looking for. I would say, one last thing. I had a call this morning with a healthcare facilities management professional, and we were just talking about different things. And after the call, he texted me and he said, "Pete, do you think I should recommend this discipline, this field to others?" He was actually just kind of questioning it. And I said to him, it's a timely question that you ask. I would say, number one, I think you should, because it's a great and it's a rewarding field, and it's a great and a rewarding discipline, and you don't get the same sense of personal validation in other industries per se. but there's also concerns. I mean, there are, these are some of the concerns here at the C-level executive. We've talked about some of the concerns on this network. And one of the, I'm working on a presentation that we'll put out on the network, but it talks exactly about what this gentleman texted me about. It's kind of the state of the industry and some of the concerning factors that are out there. So yes, it's a rewarding career. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You work in it, so you know that it is. But you'd also have to be oblivious to the fact that there are some warning signs out there. So great field, but can be a difficult field. And so anyways, with those things said, I do introduce episode 2 of Generations of Healthcare Facilities. I thank my 4 guests who joined me. It's a great discussion. We're going to continue it. So with that, enjoy part 2. Thank you so much for tuning in. In your own words, though, how important is work-life balance, and is it achievable, do you feel, in today's healthcare environment?
So, Peter, I might touch on that because, and some of the things that I was thinking about prior to coming on and doing this forum was what attracts me to healthcare and what attracts me to the organizations, and work-life balance was always number 1 for me.
Okay.
Claire touched on the personable experience with the hiring manager and being so flexible with events going on in your life. I think that's key. As COVID has shown, and everyone on this call has mentioned, there's a lot of stress being in healthcare, and having that work-life balance and having that ability to say maybe an organization has a few individuals, whether that be mentorship leaders or there's mentorees. They're able to step in and learn at the exact same time. So maybe you have a chance to work from home 2 days a week. We are so virtual now because of COVID, because we had to adapt and do that. Maybe this allows us to take that break when we need to, but still be actively involved. You're able to save your hour to 2 hour trip in the morning or routine and jump on the meetings on one exact day and get all your meetings taken care of, and then be in the weeds, have that organized chaos on the days you're there. So I think having that ability to work from home 1 to 2 days a week, 1 month, like 1 to 2 days a month, that's crucial to reducing stress and keeping individuals in our group involved in healthcare, because all the other industries are doing it and allowing them to have that flexibility. And
Yeah.
that's what attracts them the most. They say, oh, you only have to go in the office 2 days a week. Sign me up. I coming out of school, that's all I ever ask for. I can go on a vacation when I want to. So it's just, I think that's a big thing, is reducing the stress by having a number of employees that are able to be pluggable and you still be involved.
Are you able to work from home presently?
Currently, my health system, I have a fantastic mentor. If those of you on the call aren't already aware, I know Peter is. I work for Jeff Henney, who was a past president of ASHE and current nominee for president, if no one knew on this call, so for this current year. And also Frank Conley, he is also the facility manager. So I hit the jackpot with the facility I work at, learning from 2 of the best,
Yep.
or in my opinion, I'm sure others the best. So that's they give me that ability when I need it, and that makes me want to work harder for them when
Yeah.
I'm on site as well.
So I want to ask you a question. I'm not trying to reduce your salary here, but you did say this. So this is kind of like that gotcha journalism moment. I want to confirm, Logan. So was work-life balance, and again, you need to be paid fairly, but was work-life balance more important than salary for you?
I would say 80% of me cares about work-life
Wow.
balance better.
Okay.
However, to have all the stressors and have the work-life balance and be able to do things you want to do, you have to also be fairly compensated. So
Yeah.
there's a give and a take, but I think I heard this quote before from an individual, and it really speaks levels, because I am young, or I feel like I'm younger, individual in green in the industry, no one on their dying bed or on their deathbed says that, oh man, I wish I would have worked harder at my job.
Yeah.
They say, I wish I had more time with my family and friends and loved ones. I
Yeah.
wish I had this. So work-life balance wins every time over salary. However, I am human. Everyone likes a higher compensation in some regards.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. My mom passed away when I was 29 years old, and I took like, when it was coming to the end, I just took time away and never regretted it. And that's very true. I mean, you're never going to regret that time for that work-life balance. That was something I learned early on, and I've always just remembered that. I was like, okay, work will be there. I just always think, and if you've had folks die, like, the world and the carousel keeps going. You can jump off and you can jump back on, and it'll be just that organized chaos that you left. It doesn't stop for anybody. So you got to jump. Anybody else? The work-life balance question.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that one. After working in healthcare facilities management for, I would say, solid 10 years, my husband can definitely vouch for this one, is that I was never not on call. And Jim, you had said it too, we're always on call. I recall the day before my wedding, my boss called me. And he very much knew what I was doing, and he was coming to the wedding. And I just remember answering the phone going, what? I didn't ask hi. I didn't ask, is everything okay? I just said, what? Yep. Because it was one of those moments in my life that I knew I was never going to forget, my wedding. Yeah. And the fact that he was going to be there too. And I was like, you're really going to call me and ask me a work question the day before my wedding? Similarly, I was at Disney World for my best friend's wedding, and we were in line for the Tower of Terror, and someone called me. It was a Sunday afternoon at like 2:00, and I was due to go back to work on Tuesday. And I was like, one, it's the weekend, right? And two, I'm on vacation. Yep. And even more recently, Peter, I know you and I did a podcast, I think right when I found out I was pregnant. Yeah. And now my daughter is 10 months now. So that's a huge thing that for me, my previous position, I was working downtown Chicago, and I live out in the suburbs. And so I was taking the train for the longest time, and then the pandemic hit. And so I started driving. And then as the world started opening back up, if any of you have ever driven in the area of Chicago, you understand traffic. And so that I started to realize, my husband and I started talking about expanding our family. And I realized, I was like, I don't feel like I can do the appropriate work-life balance with the commute that I have. I love who I work with. I love my team. I very much enjoyed working with Lamar and the team that he created there. We had a great team. They still have a great team. I still talk to a lot of them, but I needed something for me personally that wasn't going to be as physically demanding of me. So the position I'm in now, I exclusively work from home. I do site visits as needed, and try to do them weekly. Like, what is today? Today's Thursday, right? Thursday. Yeah. Tuesday, I was gone from 6:30 a.m. until about 4 p.m. doing site visits all day for a project. And the fact that I can do one day of all site visits and then have 4 days at home is a huge help for me. We're very fortunate that at 10 months old, my daughter has never been to daycare. Between family and just flexibility in my work from home schedule, my daughter gets to stay home with my husband and I. Nice. My husband has flexibility in his job as well. And that played a huge role into me transitioning into the role that I'm in. And something, like I said, on my previous positions, I was on vacation and getting phone calls. And right when I started with Advocate Health, I had a vacation we had been planning throughout the whole pandemic that just kept putting getting pushed. And we were in Hawaii for like 12 days, my husband and I were. And I told my boss, I was like, I'm going to take my laptop. I'll be available if you need anything, because that's what I was so used to. And he was like, why would you do that? We've got it. You're fine. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? So it was a huge thing for me transitioning to Advocate Health, that's something that they strongly value, is that work-life balance. And it's something that I have very much appreciated with the organization that I'm with now. And not that my previous organization wouldn't have allowed that. It was a very different demand being an HFM versus the construction role that I'm in now.
And you know, we'll continue on with the work-life balance because I would want to hear Claire and Jim. And I was going to ask you, Brittany, how you've liked the transition out of FM into the design and construction, but I think you've just answered that question.
Yeah, it's definitely a different, and everybody was shocked when I was making the transition because I was on that trajectory to be a facilities director. And Claire, as Claire said, there's nothing to say I won't go back to that.
Right.
I mean, I definitely still, when positions pop up on LinkedIn, I definitely still read them. Not that I'm actively looking to get back into that right now, but as I told Lamar when he asked me, he was like, "Really, you're going to go into construction?" And I said, "Well, one, it's my degree. And two, if I ever want to be a support services senior leader, I need to have a well-rounded experience in multiple areas. And I feel like this is going to help me get some good experience on the construction side that otherwise I may not have gotten."
Right. And I think that's, and Logan, you're a little bit even on the younger side for this group, but the three of you, and as you accumulate the experience, everything you're doing doesn't hurt. I mean, it just kind of augments if you make the decision, because I would have to guess, you know, you'll certainly be presented with opportunities at whatever point you would want to. You're well-rounded at this point. I mean, you're seeing all ends of that spectrum, which can only help you. Doesn't hurt, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Jim or Claire, you want to jump in on the work-life balance?
Yeah, I mean that I also exclusively work from home now.
Oh, you do?
Yep, I work from home. We're a remote company. We do have a small office in Pittsburgh, so we claim Pittsburgh as our headquarters technically.
I like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, yep. So working from home exclusively, while you know, I love being an in-person person, but I didn't have the Chicago commute, but I was commuting in and out of the Charlotte metro area. And at a certain point, it was just not worth, like, no job is worth getting home every single day, already exhausted, frustrated, because I sat on the interstate for way longer than I thought I would. You know, to me, at least, no job is worth that. And so eliminating, I mean, I completely eliminated the commute. I not only did I shorten it, I eliminated it. That was a big appeal, frankly, for the position. And at FSI, you know, we do some great recruiting because we're able to recruit folks from anywhere. And as everybody else is saying, you know, if I can get an extra hour and a half back in my day just from commuting, that can have a really big impact on me and my family and my happiness. I'd say, like, when I was in the HFM space, I would try to guard my vacation time ruthlessly. It's kind of like a trade-off, like, hey, I'm on call all the time, but on these days I just can't be. And you know, relying, and I was always very, very fortunate to have managers, supervisors, directors who I could rely on to say, hey, do not call me. Will you please handle anything that comes up? And if you need help, skip me and call my leader. I think just having open and honest conversations with your peers as much as you can. Again, I was always in a very supportive department where I could, you know, kind of put that stake in the sand and say, hey, this is my time and I really need it. But I did have to actively guard my time.
Yeah, I like the way you phrased that. Hey, Brittany, I was gonna say, just to the Tower of Terror, but my kids still make fun of me when I went on the Tower of Terror. You know, they snapped that picture of you, and I'm holding on like I'm dying, screaming. That drop that did it to me. I don't know if you liked it, but wow, I wasn't expecting it, and whoop, down it went.
I was with a first timer too, so it was definitely an experience.
Yeah, it was. Jim, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I'm trying to formulate my answer for work-life balance because I struggle with a way to formulate it because there's just so many variables to it. It's hard to put my finger on what I find most important. So just for some background, so you know, as a facilities manager before this job, I'm about 90% remote. So like I'm working from home today. I was in the office the last couple of days. If we're doing teaching, we usually have to go somewhere for a seminar or something like that. And at some point, the pandemic kind of stopped this, but my department's also supposed to participate in surveys once a quarter. So, you know, just to make sure that we're well-rounded, we know what the survey experience is like. I haven't gotten to do that, and I'm really looking forward to when it happens again. Let's do that again. So there's some travel and some of that involved my job, which is great because I do like to be able to get out and about a little bit. But I will say it was a breath of fresh air to not have a 2-hour commute every day. You know, when you get into the office at about 6:30 and you left at about 6:30 most days, I'd say. And then you got home at about 7:30 at night. That's a long day. And, you know, doing that 5 days a week, it got old. It really did. I almost didn't know what to do with myself with how much time I had once I transitioned out of this role. And just so everyone knows, like I was approached for the position that I'm in right now. I was recruited, so I really didn't know it was coming. I wasn't actively looking for it. You know, I enjoyed being a facilities manager as much as one can. Like I enjoyed the job. I was making progress. But you know, when I talked to Herman McKenzie, who most of you probably know or have seen, who's my current boss. He's fantastic. You know, when he explained to me like how the job worked and everything that was involved and kind of all the perks and everything, like I think the work-life balance light bulb clicked for me, and I realized, man, there's other things I can do with my time, because I really wasn't doing much else. I was getting my master's while I was also in a facilities manager, so I don't remember like doing anything other than either being on my computer classes or just doing work stuff. So it was like those 2 years were an absolute blur, and I think everything all together kind of constituted to where I realized I wanted to make a change because I felt like I had no breathing space at all. So it's kind of weird. I don't want to, I absolutely don't want anyone listening to this to think that the role wasn't great, because it was, but I had a lot of personal variables that were making it very complicated. I had a long commute. I was in school. I was also trying to kind of rebuild a department at the time that had gone through a very rough transition. And I was all aware of these things going into them. So I was definitely not blindsided by anything. But then everything just kind of compounds, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a position you're like, man, could I do something else right now? Because I feel like I could, and I feel like it might be better. If nothing else, it'd be different. So I'd absolutely wouldn't ever want to get away from the challenge of doing something new. And that's how I approached the new role, kind of jumping back into the reasoning. Because I had a lot of people ask me, like, what are you doing? It's like, because it was almost, most people were like, it's a horizontal move. You're not going to be a manager anymore. You're not going to be in operations. So like, what are you doing? And a few times I asked myself, what am I doing? I don't know. But I thought that if nothing else, I'd have the opportunity to take a step back, take a breath of fresh air, and enjoy some more aspects of life. And I've absolutely been able to do that. And I feel far more organized and what I want to do next going forward. And this role has definitely provided a lot of opportunities to get different experience in the field that I know I could reapply if I was to jump back into a director role or whatever role there was that I came across.
That's interesting, Jim, because you know, I never once thought of that move horizontally for you. That didn't cross my mind. I thought, well, risk and compliance and regulatory is such a huge component of the facilities role. So that's interesting. That horizontal perspective. I didn't see it that way.
Well, I think
not that you asked me.
No, and I think it's fair, and I kind of thought about it too, because I was absolutely on the track for a facilities director, and I had already applied for a role, and I hadn't gotten it because they thought I was a little green, and I didn't disagree with them at the time. But I think the fact that I was getting out of kind of the running for that role, at least the organization I was at, that's why it was kind of viewed that way. And I agreed. I was taking the risk of taking myself out of the network.
Yeah.
But I also have found, and I'd be curious on everyone else's thoughts on this, is I felt like sometimes to move up professionally, you got to jump out of the pool and go look at what's going on around, outside of the fence. And it feels like sometimes when you leave, you can actually come back and you'll be in a better position than if you just stayed there. And I find that very strange about and then maybe it was just the organization I was working with, or the people I've got the experience with, but I don't feel like I'm alone, where most people have made that realization that leaving and then having the opportunity to come back might be more fortuitous for you than just staying on the path.
What do you guys think about that? Jim,
Yeah.
Anybody have thoughts on that?
Jim, I think you hit it on the head there. I've had a couple of different mentors throughout the few years on various different hospitals and industries, and one of which he's a fire and life safety engineer. and he moved to loss control and manufacturing. And he was in healthcare and moved there. And one of the things that he brought up to me was to gain more experience, to move up if you're always where you are. And this is more so just paraphrasing what you just said. You're not going to gain anything other than what you're already doing. You're going to put in 3 to 4 years of time gaining the same, just improving the same attributes that you won't get unless you move somewhere else. So that's always been a thought deep in my mind. How do I better myself as a safety professional so that way I can potentially go somewhere else and then come back in as a healthcare manager? All of the individuals on this call have said it. I think that's the key thing with healthcare, though, that we have to really navigate and try to change in a sense. And I don't know if that's through mentorship or if that's through different projects, opening the doors into a construction project and using your networking and relationship skills to open those doors, because that's really the issue at hand. If you want to attract people, and especially the green people, if they don't see there's a succession plan moving up, then they will eventually leave. And I will also state that I am extremely happy with where I am. I feel incredibly blessed to be in such a great organization. It's just it's difficult seeing others move on and get such great experience from it and not being qualified for certain positions until you do so.
I think like hearing Jim describe the response of some of his colleagues, I experienced similar. I mean, some people like thought I was throwing my career away by leaving a hospital employer. And that really reminds me to your opening question, Peter. You know, what can the profession do to attract people? And this idea of like the linear, like climbing up the mountain career, I think is long gone. I think it's long gone, and the quicker we all let go of that, you know, it's a service to the profession and it's a service to our colleagues.
Well, you know what, and Brittany, I'll let you have the last word. When I was listening to you guys talk, in my mind, I was thinking that's a generational difference that has occurred and absolutely flipped. And I'm kind of in the middle. There's my dad's generation, then there's me, and I guess I'm 2 generations ahead of you, but we've kind of moved off that. But you guys have completely moved away from that. I mean, that generation where you put in 15 years and you just kind of move up by duration is flipped. And that's apparent listening to you guys. Brittany, go please. I'm sorry about that.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's a huge, we're having a generational conversation. And I think that's a huge, for the longest time for me, the M word millennial was a swear word when it came from anybody outside of the millennial generation. It was an instant trigger for me. There was quite a few ASHE chapter leaderships where people would get up and talk about the millennials and they never had a nice thing to say about us. And in my head, that's how can you succession plan when you have nothing nice to say about the people you're trying to recruit? And they say, they're not serious. They don't want to stay with an organization. They job hop is what they would call it. But we job hop when there's no opportunities, or if you're not providing us any growth. There's certain points that at some of my previous positions, there was a gentleman who he was very direct with anybody and everybody who asked. Leadership, his direct leadership, he's like, I need a growth path. And if I don't have that, I'm going to have to look elsewhere. He didn't burn any bridges, but he was just very honest about what his ambitions were. He had just finished his master's. He wanted a higher level position. And they were like, well, we just don't have that. So I think that the millennial generation is very honest about what their expectations are. And I just don't know if some of our leadership that may be of a different generation is receptive to that. And then that's when they start seeing millennials in a negative light.
Well, and that's why I wanted to ask the questions of you guys relative to kind of that work-life balance, because that's usually the jumping off point where they talk about generation, or they don't want to work. But you guys can speak for yourself, and you address it very well. You wouldn't, you can't broad brush any one group of people in that manner. Last question: would you encourage college students about this career, about this path?
I think it's a twofold question, Peter. I think I would, however, as long as it's done correctly. I think if someone is just thrown into healthcare with an organization that doesn't have that foundation set, I think they could get overworked or see a lot of bad habits that will make them grow to dislike healthcare as a whole. I think you have to have that precedent set of the structure, as Brittany mentioned, the growth path, the support that Claire and Jim has stated with the collaboration aspects. I think you have to have the whole team built together and have buy-in all the way up to the upper senior C-suite leadership, which with a Penn we do.
Yeah.
Very lucky. So I think I would in those aspects, but other than that, I would say no. I think it depends on the organization and how their values for generations are. If they're adaptive, then absolutely. I think you can learn so much in healthcare that other industries are only focused on certain aspects. For healthcare, that industry can go into any of the other trades at any other company and succeed very quickly. Where if you throw someone from manufacturing, you throw them into healthcare, they're lost. They're and I don't know if others agree with that.
Well, I agree. I agree with you. Not that I'm all the others, but I agree. Claire, how about you?
I would wholeheartedly recommend this industry to folks. And just, succinctly, every single day is an opportunity to make a better experience for someone who's possibly in one of the most vulnerable, periods of their life. And when I would look at my work through that lens, and I still look at my work through that lens, right? I'm helping the folks who are making that daily impact. It's the patient room window that was leaking. Now it's not leaking. That's a big deal to the patient in that room. Your coworkers in EVS, their elevator never works. Now it runs perfectly. So they're not, stacking trash somewhere. That's really impactful. And so when I would encourage people wholeheartedly to consider the profession, especially if they have a service-minded approach towards it. Every single day is an opportunity to make something better for somebody.
Thank you.
To rephrase a little bit of what Claire said, one of the things I always tell people when they're considering this industry is that you never have 2 days that are the same. You're always going to have a new experience every day, similar to what Claire was saying, but kind of said a little differently. I definitely still encourage people into this industry. And the biggest thing I say is, like, you don't know what you don't know. And, when I first walked into my first internship, I said, you walk into the hospital and they say, oh, it's healthcare facilities management. And the light bulb went off for me. And I was just like, oh, someone has to take care of this place. Someone has to keep this place running. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about. I unfortunately started college in 2008. My dad had just gotten laid off from the trades. So right, when the economy was taking a decline. Yeah. So one of the biggest things I told people in my program at Purdue, I was like, that's great that, you're going to build the building, but they're always going to need somebody to maintain it.
Yeah.
Capital will run out and there may not always be money to build things, but there's always going to be money to maintain something. So that's one of the biggest sells that I always try to put to somebody too, is you're definitely going to have career, what's the word I'm looking for? Job security.
Yeah, you do.
That's and one thing that, they may ask us to run lean, but they've always got to have somebody to run the program.
Absolutely. Jim?
So think about this question. Like, I would say that you can recommend it to people, and I don't think the market or however, and I think it's changing with the help of people like you, Peter. I don't think there's a lot of awareness out there with regards to this job field, but there's limitations to this job field. One, there are only so many positions that are open, right? It's a fairly small market. Like, healthcare is very big, but facilities management, facilities maintenance, construction, pretty small departments in general. And I think, to Claire's point, it takes a certain type of person to do this kind of job.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this question, and I'm a little bit 50-50. And like for me, the negatives are, I look at a lot of my friends that I grew up with who are, they're my age, they're about the same point. They work in other fields that are mostly sales oriented in some manner. And just putting it straightforward, they make a lot more money than I do. Like they're all very well off. So like you can't come into this job, and I was aware of this, right? I'm here. I absolutely believe this is something that I enjoy doing, and I'm glad to be here. I think if I could go back and do it again, I'd probably do it a little bit different. I think I'd actually have gone to engineering school, and I would probably have come at it from that perspective, more on the construction design side, because I think that would have been more the way I would have liked to approached it. And every day I wish I had an engineering degree. Like I can't even like, it's just frustrating to me how much I wish I could just design stuff. But there's a lot of things that I think people would have to take into account to make sure that they would be satisfied working in this field. And that is that you are going to kind of give up that compensation, because there's a lot more money that can be made out there in other fields. It's just not here in this field. And that's just the truth of the matter. I mean, you can still make a very positive living for yourself. I don't think anyone here will debate that. You also need to have, I think, a hardworking mindset, and you need to have that service-oriented mindset that Claire talked about. Like when you walk out of a patient's room after she talked about fixing the window, I mean, I've been there hundreds of times, and I've never in my life felt more satisfied than after I walked into a patient room and I was able to fix whatever issue was plaguing them, because their day is now made so much better. And I miss that every day that I'm not doing that. I miss that when I was a facilities manager. It took everything in my power to not just go and answer calls, because I wanted to go do that. I wanted to fix things, and I was worried that people that were going there weren't approaching it with the same enthusiasm that I had, which is a very selfish thought, but it's one that I had to deal with. So I think you have to have that mentality to be successful and to actually bring something positive to the field. So that's why I kind of temper what I say is, yes, you should, I would definitely recommend it to people, but there's some people that I know that I'm very close with. They would be awful in this field. They would not be able to do it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be because they wouldn't be able to do it on a professional manner. It's personal. They wouldn't be able to do it. I don't think they would get self-satisfaction, and I don't believe they would bring anything positive to the field, because it's just not the way that they're wired. So that's kind of my hot take on that one.
That's a scorching hot take. Well, I gotta say that was, I appreciate the conversation. That was really good. What a great perspective to offer. And so I thank my guest, Logan Landis. I never knew your name was so difficult to say.
I get called Landis, Landon, double L. I thought Logan was a very easy name, but as you just showed, when you see my last name, it trips people up for whatever reason.
The LL. So Logan Landis, Claire Salinas, Brittany Remec, and Jim Grana. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I really do appreciate your time. Hopefully come back again if you don't mind, because there's some stuff there left on the table, but we got a break for now. So I thank each of you for appearing today.
Thanks, Peter, for having us.
Thanks, Peter.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
You, Peter.
So Peter Martin from the Healthcare Facilities Network, thank you for tuning into the Generations episode. And now you know why it was called Generations. I didn't know why I was calling it Generations at the beginning, but I do know now coming out on the end. So thank you all for appearing. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for watching this episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network. Please give this episode a like, as it really does make a difference in helping to promote the discipline of healthcare facilities management.